Hi there, good evening. It's been a while since we haven't been live on the channel. Everyone was on vacation, and so do I. But I'm kicking this season with a series of Live with Ghalia episodes, and I'm starting this evening with a very special guest, as we're going to be talking about an important topic in fashion and beauty and retailing, and this is related to sustainability and inclusion in the retail world. However, and as usual, every topic that I discuss is going to be contextualized into the retailing world. We'll be talking today about the importance of inclusion and the importance of messages that brands do communicate to their customers, and how do these messages finally translate on the physical retail site or throughout every brand's touch point. But Ananya is going to be telling us more about that, as she is a specialist in the field, and she's going to be introducing herself, of course. Let me just invite her in to start this conversation. So I'm just waiting one little second to connect with Ananya. Hi there.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. I think we're connecting across the continent,
Yeah,
and I'm so happy to be doing this with you tonight.
I'm very happy to. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure.
And the pleasure is mine. And I did a very brief introduction, but I want to leave the floor to you to just tell us who you are and the importance and about the topic that we're going to discuss today, because you are the right person and the reference in the field. So the floor is yours, Ananya.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I just want to keep this absolutely fun and easygoing, and I want this topic to actually reach out to people. Excuse the sounds in the background because I'm back home for a bit from France, and we're going to hear a lot of people talking
Of
across.
course.
So we're just please avoid that. So, like I said, I want to keep this very easy. I want to keep it. Easy in the sense that I want everybody to be a part of this conversation, which generally doesn't happen. As for me, people would be wondering, why am I here? Why am I the one who needs to be talking about inclusion and diversity? Simple answer for that probably would be, I have lived very personally the debate between merit and minority, or let's say merit and majority, which is essentially what diversity and inclusion talks about if you look, deeper into it. But who am I? What do I do? I'm a 20-something Indian exploring the world of France for the past couple of years. Uh, I am deep diving into the luxury industry, trying to study it, trying to understand it, trying to live it. Apart from that, I absolutely love fragrances, coffee, and Harry Potter. If we have fans of any of those three things, please raise your hands. Please send in some emojis. That's going to be amazing. We can probably connect on those. Um, and of course, diversity and inclusion became a passion project for me a couple of years back. And recently, I've also been doing a lot of research into it. Thanks to you, I got connected to some of the best industry specialists who are working in D&I. And not just the luxury fragrances industry, but also other industries, because this is such a new topic. And I just thought maybe, for my research, even though it's limited to the fragrances, cosmetics, and beauty division, it'll be amazing to have the point of view of others, maybe people from other industries, how we can, take that and bring it to the luxury beauty industry. So
Right.
that's about me. When you give me the question, talk about yourself, I can go on and on. So you have to stop me. I can keep
Uh,
talking about
the
me.
story itself is great. I mean, our personal stories craft our journeys, and I believe this is
Exactly.
by itself an interesting thing to look for, and that makes part of our journey, our choices, and maybe our profession. Uh,
Indeed.
so, so you happen to land in Paris, and you happen to work with we're going to be talking about luxury and beauty and cosmetics as it relates the most to your current experience, and it would be nice to relate on it. So let's introduce those who joined us about what you really do, and what does this topic of inclusion mean today in the world of retail?
Sure. Let's say when we talk about diversity and inclusion specifically, let's pick up makeup or fragrances, for example. I'm a woman of color. I lived in France, in Europe for a bit. Whenever I would go to find out, let's say, foundation or makeup for myself, it was slightly difficult. Either there were tones which were too dark, either there were tones which were too white. I would never be able to find something for myself in mainstream brands. Yes, of course, there are certain brands I could probably take names of, brands that I've been using, but just very specific brands. And it's not just about me, but I know there are lots of people out there who face such problems on a daily basis, or when we talk about beauty, fragrances, cosmetics, when it comes to that. So even though it's a personal journey, this is just one person experiencing this. I've had so many people telling me the same stories. For example, just sharing a bit about the research that I'm doing. So I'm talking to people who identify as males about their shopping experiences when it comes to makeup, because we have a lot of brands which have now introduced makeup for men. Per se. Let's say Chanel has introduced something. We have Tom Ford, which has come up with a line. And we have, of course, many Asian brands, especially South Korean, Chinese brands. However, when it comes to personal experience, when I actually talk to people and I ask them, let's say people who identify as males, my male friends, do you actually go and buy makeup? Do you use makeup? And I've surprisingly gotten a lot of yeses from them. They're like, yes, of course we use makeup. I have a friend who works in the finance field, and he's like, I'm up and I need makeup. I need to cover my eye bags when I'm going for meetings. I need to look my best. And I'm like, how do you buy it? His first answer was, I borrowed it from my mom or from my sister or from my girlfriend or somebody like that. I'm like, why are you not going out there and buying your makeup? He's like, when I go to a retail store which actually sells makeup, I see huge posters of women. All the salespeople are usually, women, or it's very women centric what these salespeople at retail stores are taught about. Of course, you're a retail specialist. You will be able to tell us more about, branded retails and other types of retail situations that we have out there. But this is sort of how things go. This is exactly what's been happening out there. So that is where this topic becomes important. This is where we need to talk about, even though it's a very simple shopping experience for you and I, it could be perfect. It could be easy. We go, we buy a lipstick, we buy an eyeliner, we buy a fragrance, and we come back. But there are so many people out there for whom such a small experience can become tiring, or it can be daunting or intimidating that they don't even step out. They rely on other people to get their products for them, even though they're using them. So I think in a very simple manner, this is why it's important.
And so if we just calculate things as they are, we see that there's a real need or a gap in the market. And naturally, brands and marketeers hope to fill these gaps. But apparently, we are not attending to them in terms of marketing and communications. And this is where the discrepancy lies, right? I mean, there are lots of people who have special needs in terms of products that they don't necessarily find out there. And as we said that in most of the countries, we have a stereotype for, or a general figure for what the consumer should be looking like, whereas the reality is not that. So let's talk a little bit about those communications, about those messages. How do brands conceive today communications messages to be more inclusive?
Well, I would just say we have a lot of external agencies that we are working with. We have reports from Accenture, which tell us that, it's very important that we cater to, let's say, the minority, or let's say stop talking in biases. Let's, for example, stop talking in dual genders or bi-genders, as we say, because we have an umbrella of genders. Then, of course, we have different sexualities out there. And brands are still trying to, understand what these terms are, very honestly. Nobody has it figured out. Whenever we think about D&I, the first thing which comes to our mind is, okay, let's put somebody of color out there. But there's so much more to D&I. It's not just racism, it's not just colorism. We have ageism, we have sexism coming in, we have different genders and sexuality coming in. So, like you said, I think companies and brands are still trying to understand or grasp this concept at the moment. We haven't had it all, we don't have it all figured out, but we
Yeah.
definitely are taking steps. And I think it's very important to mention over here a very important theory, which is called the mold and mirror theory, which we use in marketing, which is basically advertising and marketing can either mold the societal behavior or it can mirror what's already happening. So we need to lie somewhere in between. And I think there are, it's just a hit and try which is happening out there. Of course, we give briefings in our campaigns that we should have people, more relatable people. We should have people of color. We should have people of all genders. We should include disabled people. But I think it's also important and relevant for me to point out here that as much as a problem there is in being able to include everybody or being diverse, we have
Mm.
an equally, let's say, dangerous situation cropping up otherwise, which is basically of diversity hires.
Yeah.
Instead of actually doing groundwork, instead of actually educating the entire company, the workforce, what's happening now is that we just have diversity hires. We just have people who are hiring, companies just hiring people of color, saying, okay, now we have a D&I leader who looks like this, who should look like this, who should look let's say 1 out of the 100 people. It's a different person when you look at them, and okay, our job is done.
Yes.
But you have measurable KPIs out there to measure your D&I efforts. Is that person getting absolute support? So, when I spoke to the people whose names you thankfully and gratefully connected me with, and other people through my research, this is what I found out. I happened to be talking to somebody from the Kering group and the Louis Vuitton group who's heading the D&I efforts. And it was a very candid chat. And the person ended up telling me, you know what? Do not join the D&I team. If you want to join a team, let it be any other team and make an effort within that team to bring about D&I efforts.
Right. Right.
So I think the crux of this entire thing is going to be, we need more education. We need
Yes.
more groundwork to be done.
At the time being, we're just filling the gaps and saying
Exactly.
we've done our part and we've
Yeah.
done our part of the deal, and we have hired the people. However, as you said, we didn't thread the actual person with the actual process. And this is very cultural. Now, the question lies, first of all, are people within one retail team willing to accept each other in this concept of diversity? And if diversity and inclusion is a big theme today in a retail brand, how does he include it or inject it or incorporate it in its culture? Because this is a rehabilitation, if I might use the word, of the entire company's process. And the brands that you just named are not companies with 5 or 10 people, right? So how are you thinking about that process for the coming years, of course?
Of course, I think it's a very push and pull kind of environment which exists when we talk about D&I. Of course, we have specific D&I teams which are trying to, push across certain educational modules, certain methods which should be implemented. On the other hand, we have all these, teams, let's say the supply chain team, the marketing team, the advertising team. We need to be absorbing this, whilst we also need to be pushing out our own ideas. So there needs to be a tandem between the D&I workforce per se and all the other teams. And like I said, when we talk about retail, when we talk about any specific, let's say, part of the company which needs to include this, it needs to be a collective effort, which unfortunately it isn't right now. From what I've experienced, from what I've seen personally, from the inside look, from talking to various people, I think it's still something we're trying to push. A lot of it is superficial, if I may say so. We definitely have a lot of advertisements going in, but the education part is still missing. Educating people who've been in the brand for, let's say, 20, 25 years. And I'll just share a very personal anecdote here. When I talk to people my age, when I talk to my own peers, colleagues, apart from, not work, we're just having, let's say, a chat, we're having a drink and we're talking about these topics, I often hear, do you really think it's important? And
Yeah.
we often get in this tiff and this debate, and I'm like, people of the current age still question how important this is or how important it
Right.
isn't.
Right.
So I think even within the companies, this is something which is, there's a push and pull. Of course, there are several companies which have come across with actual efforts, and something which I absolutely love is I'm a big fan of Gucci's campaigns, their advertising campaigns. They've included a lot of people, and of course we've heard a lot of people saying, that looks eccentric.
Yeah.
And here comes the second problem with D&I. The pace is important with which we push out D&I efforts. People are not used to seeing this, let's say in the retail space or in the advertising space. People are not used to seeing something which they haven't seen over the years. They've been conditioned to, let's say, pink is for women, blue is for men. They know it. This is what they've been conditioned to think. So if you put across a random color, let's say yellow out there, they would not know what to relate it with. So the
Right.
pace with which we push out D&I efforts, be it in retail, advertising, marketing, it needs to be slow. And there needs to be a complete, map work done of who is part of the brand, who's working in the company, which age group do they belong to, because the ages really help us understanding to what level a person has been conditioned. And there's a research which says whenever there's, let's say, homosexual imagery in advertisements, which is being used very frequently now, the older people tend to switch off their televisions, tend to not read that magazine. So here,
Right.
whenever we're talking about D&I and its efforts, it's important we also think about age and what
The
is the
generational question.
exactly. It definitely comes in. Hence, when you're going to a retail store, it's important to know who your customer is, what your footfall is like, what kind
Right.
of age group is coming in.
Right.
So there's a lot to be done over here for sure.
I am intrigued to know if there is a difference between cultural acceptance across countries. Sometimes when we do research, customers tend to give us answers that might be pleasing to marketeers or to researchers. But when we come to the actual side of things, these same customers or this panel would behave like an entirely different pattern that might be shocking to us. Our customers also under the stress of needing to go with the bandwagon and say, like, everyone today is talking about this, I need to be aware about it. But at the same time, as you said, might not be implied completely in the topic and might not relate to it when the actual moment of the purchasing process or decision making would take place.
It's funny that you should mention it because this happened to me very recently,
Yeah.
all in part of this process, this research that I'm conducting. A lot of my friends told me, of course, gender doesn't matter. We'll go out and, it was a public poll, let's say a friendly poll, which I conducted, and everybody answered, in the bandwagon, saying positive things, saying D&I is important, saying gender equality is important. Then all of those people who had put these answers, I reached out to some of them personally. People I knew I could talk about freely, and I told them, let's get on a call, let's get on a video call, and I'd like to understand your thought process even more. And this is exactly the answer I got in a safe space. Like, see, of course we know it's important, but we don't know how should it be implemented, or
Right.
how should we actually approach this. And of course I had a great laugh with all of them, and I cut the call, and then I'm like, this is where the problem lies. And that's why the crux of everything for me, this entire thing, is having conversations like these, inviting people to conversations like these, having these conversations in layman terms, in words, easy words, so that everybody can be a part of it, and creating a safe space so that people can actually tell us what is it that's missing, what is it that they do not understand, so that on our parts we can actually, let's say, bridge the gap.
Cater to that.
Yeah, cater to that. So a lot of people told me that, Nanya, if you take off gender from, let's say, the aisles of supermarkets or retail stores, not tell me this is the men's section or the women's section, and you try to cater to, let's say, the other genders by making everything genderless, or because that was one thing which I was trying to push across, we wouldn't be able to relate to it.
Yeah.
And I actually, took a step back and I tried to understand that this is very relevant. This is actually important for us to understand that people might be aware that this is important. People might be aware that there are people out there who need to be included.
Mm.
But at the same time, they feel threatened that
Yes.
they will not be able to relate to the shopping process per se if we talk about retail anymore. So this is definitely a problem which I saw, and I feel this needs to be catered somehow. And the only idea which came to my mind, which I've already mentioned, is pace.
Yes.
Slowly, educating them slowly, pushing
Yes.
across, nothing revolutionary, nothing too big. Start with a small section, start with little, little advertisements, little color scheme changes, something like that. Maybe bring together the female and male aisles, of beauty products, and then probably merge them. A very slow, but, retail specialist like you will be able to give us a better answer as to how these things can be implemented on floor. But this is
Yeah.
just something I came across. I'm like, okay, a lot of people know what this stuff is and they're ready to talk about it, but they have absolutely zero idea as to how they can individually contribute to the process.
Right. Because come to think about it, now that you're talking and explaining, I would be personally, as a retailer, intrigued. And I would come to think that maybe if we're going a lot into that concept of rethinking our offering and the way we display our offering in
Yeah,
front of the consumer, if we're going into a flattened offering, it might jeopardize the people who already consume from our brand.
exactly.
That's the idea of maybe still categorizing, but including more options to the
Yeah,
offering. From a marketing perspective, it's true that we have been conditioned. This term is a
yeah,
really important term. And everything that we have seen and learned for the past 20 years suddenly looks like the Bible of retailing and consumption, as if it's the norm that has
yeah,
been there. But today, it's true that we want to cater to these differences, and it's important to do that. But to what extent can retailers do that on their payroll and on
yeah.
their right? This is
Exactly.
something.
For
but
sure.
but but now that we have said that, okay, there should be a solution, but the most important thing is to take this step by step and very slowly. And
Yeah,
if we go through that direction and that line of thought, can we also talk about, again, I know that we've covered it, the importance of this discrepancy between what brands are communicating to attract customers and what's happening on the shop floor, really. Like today we have catered a brand for women of color, and these women happen to come to one of our touch points or one of our brands, and she's in touch with one of the team members. And I remember when we had the discussion, you
yeah,
also explained that sometimes those team members who are selling this particular product for this particular customer wouldn't do it as they should, right? Because they
exactly.
would have like a sort of prejudgment. So
Yes.
tell me more about that.
So this is something which has been heavily researched before as well, and I'm not just talking about, let's say, makeup and beauty here. Let's just pick up a luxury brand, and a lot of times the education that retail specialists get is based, a lot of the workbooks are based on how a person looks. They are trained to perceive, you know, the purchasing power of the purchasing capacity of a person who walks into the store per se. And it's not wrong. Somewhere it's right. And I've also personally seen a lot of these are based on the countries where they come from. So personally, I was once told, okay, that looks like somebody from Saudi, and they're definitely going to spend a lot on perfumes. So of course, biases help us, stereotypes help us. We have positive stereotypes; they do help us. But in situations like these, it might become really difficult because I faced it myself. Sometimes they ask me, "Oh, okay, once upon a time I just wanted to go in and explore a certain store. I did have the purchasing capacity, but as soon as they learned I was a student, they stopped catering to me in a manner they should have been had they known that maybe I was somebody who was buying, who was probably working in so and so brand at so and so position. So this oftentimes happens. And again, it it brings us down to the fact that you need to start the work from ground level. These
Yeah.
people who are in the store need to be educated about the product, and they need to be told that, okay, we might have just one customer who will come in, who's going to look like this, who's going to have certain needs, who's going to be different, and you need to be as attentive to them as you would be to anybody, any
Exactly.
customer out there. So I think we can't really blame people who are on the floor, who are retail specialists, or who are there, who are selling, because they don't have enough experience. Then again, they do not have enough education or modules being pushed down by the brands themselves. And it's again something new. So I always feel that you should give a person some benefit of doubt. If it happens once, give them a benefit of doubt. If you go again, it happens again, then okay, there probably could be a problem. If it happens the third time, there definitely is a problem. And you probably just, you just don't have a good customer experience in that place, and you probably switch places. And
Right.
this was in fact a study which has come out, and which I just happened to be reading, which said that 43% of the LGBTQ community actually is loyal to a place which puts efforts in D&I, and they can see it on the retail floor. So
Yeah.
the people, how they talk to you, if you can actually relate to the place, relate to the people who are selling, if they can make stories about similar backgrounds, it creates a lot of positive effect, and these people become loyal to that place. So again,
Right.
like you were saying, like we were just discussing, how brands do it, which brands should be doing it. I also feel not every brand should be doing it. If this is not your business goal, if you're not, if you do not want to attract, let's say, another segment of customers or consumers, this is not something you should be getting into just for propaganda. Leave
Right.
it alone. Concentrate on the consumers, the customers that you already have. But again,
Right.
if this is your business goal, if you want to expand, if you want to cater to new people, invest in education,
Yes.
invest in ground level work.
And this is a greater responsibility for brands at the strategy level, I believe, to rethink their brand's persona. Like the
Yes,
basics of
the
branding and
basics of
marketing.
branding and marketing. Yeah.
And sometimes, come to think about it, and I'm thinking out loud, when these team members or the personnel is trained to understand about the brand, maybe they have been also acquainted with a figure or a persona that has been printed there on that
There.
booklet.
Yeah.
And then they identify subliminally directly this person with the persona, and they would do like types of reactions that are exclusive or inclusive, and which engenders these types of, as we say, behavior, and sometimes repulsive behavior that we feel it directly from the brand. And most of the times, consumers cannot purchase from the brand as they don't have the means to do it. However, they want a certain type of connection,
They want to
and
feel.
some exactly they want to just be part of the brand's story, and sometimes investing in that alone elevates the brand's equity, and this is something that brands should be working on. It's really interesting. So now, as you highlighted this important point related to the fact that most of the brands might be jumping on this trend of inclusion, of or
Yeah.
X matters and Y matters,
Yeah. Exactly.
everyone is doing it, let's do it. And sometimes we are criticized, or we criticize these brands as doing something that does not identify their identity. So
Yeah.
when do we have to stop, and when do we have to push for things in that regards?
Again, the first point is first to understand whether this is your consumer, whether this is the customer you're trying to target. If not, if you're a brand which is specific to, which is high on feminine energy, females, stick to it.
Yeah.
If you're catering to just a particular geographical zone which has only certain type of people, stick to it. Talk to them in their language, in the language which they understand. However, if you're an international brand, if you want to expand, if that is your business goal, if you want to have new consumers, new customers coming in, then this is something definitely that needs to be thought about. There needs to be a strategy team. There needs to be a strategy team which includes the entire company into it. And it should not be lone standing effort, as they say. Because
Yeah.
if just one team keeps doing it and the other teams have no idea as to what's going on, there's not going to be a holistic, let's say, situation out there, then your message is going to be crossed. The consumer is going to feel confused. Oh, this is what I see on the retail space, but this is what I read in the newspaper. But on Instagram they're doing absolutely something absolutely else. So that's where it depends. I think the first and foremost thing to know is, do you even want to do it?
Yes.
Or do you just want to get into it because everybody is doing it? It's going to get you some social traction, but it might get you momentary social traction, but the backlash is going to be bigger than that. And I think the first time we spoke, I did share this example of a particular company I was working in, and I went to them and I asked them, at that time the George Floyd case had happened, and all the brands out there were posting that
Black Lives Matter, right?
Everything was happening, and I was just confused as to the brand which I was working with at that moment. Why were they not doing it?
Yeah.
So I went up, I asked this question, and they told me, in the past we've had certain problems. We still are not as inclusive when it comes to color or race in our product offerings or even in our advertisements. And if we just do it as a lone standing effort at this point to get some social traction, we're going to face a lot of backlash. And that was such an important lesson for me as well, because before that I just felt like, I'm working in a place which doesn't care. But in fact, their way of caring was more, they had thought it out well. They told me the reason, I understood. And that's a lesson which I've kept with me ever since, that if you're ever working on something like this, you need to be sensitive about what's happened in the past, what your current efforts are. And like you very well mentioned, are they in alignment with everything else that you're doing? Otherwise, you're just going to be, confusing the audience or your consumer.
Right. And I should highlight, and I believe it's part also of the discussion on the importance of customers and the responsibility of our customer base or customers in general. Social media has given an important voice to customers lately, and sometimes they tend to be harsh with regards to their comments and their points of views related to brands. And sometimes brands do find themselves in a difficult situation, having to explain themselves, as you said, at each time. We know that some brands could do mistakes and they have to give us the reasons why they have done them, but sometimes customers could be very harsh. To what extent are customers today well educated about matters related to these types of decision making? Are customers also confused with this flow of data that they are reading or getting access to every day? And it's really like having their minds blow up, I believe, with this quantity of information, and at a certain point they are not being able to process things as they should.
I would definitely say when we use our social media listening tools, because this is media activity, something which I'm heavily involved in along with influencer marketing. So whenever we see or study our data or our consumer base, we have realized that people who actually consume the brand are the people who speak against it or for it are very less, who are actually brand loyalists or people who are actually the buyers of that particular brand. The other people are fringe people who are on social media, who are, let's say, social media idealists, who are there on social media. They have a free flow of information and they do not, or let's say they're not capable of differentiating as to what one brand is doing and what the other brand is doing. So I think as important as social media is in telling us, in pointing out or keeping the brands in check, let's say, as to about what they're doing, what their efforts are, where they're going wrong or right, it's also important for the social media teams or the media teams of these brands to know that you do not have to listen to everything. And of course it's happening. We filter out so many messages when we're working. We have dedicated teams doing it for us. And of course, brands are listening to each and every voice out there. But they've decided to filter it out, decided to say, okay, this is important and this isn't important. And one example I'll share with you is I'm working with a brand as a consultant, and we were referring to our audience mainly as ladies. We were using the word ladies a lot in our social media copies. And that was purely because we had the following of that brand was 98% females. We had somebody pointing out again and again, just one user, again and again, sending in DMs, sending in comments that, I would really appreciate if you stop using the word ladies. It was a politest comment I've ever read, or the message, I've ever read, that, I love what you're doing, I love your products, but it'll be amazing if you stopped using this word. And we actually took it into consideration, because we realized that, okay, this might be our following on the social media page, but our consumers, our actual buyers could be anybody.
Yes.
And, so these are positive examples which I'd like to share and throw in out there, because it's important that, you use this social media tool to your benefit per se. But of course, as as we were discussing, there are lots of people out there who are using social media listening tools, and they know where to filter out what to keep, for sure.
Right. But yeah, it's really important for us to be as responsible towards customers and them towards us, because this is like an important transition in retail and communications today. So we've covered a little bit the concept of diversity and inclusion in most of the luxury brands, maybe in cosmetics, as we said. Does this apply also to other industries? Maybe, I don't know if you had the chance to work with any, such as maybe travel or services, restaurants, etc. And are we speaking about this concept in the same way? Does it translate in the same way in other industries?
Well, I've only had a chance to work with, let's say, luxury real estate, because luxury is sort of, where I am, real estate and hospitality. And I would say over there, at least in the media communications or the campaigns that we did, we were not heavily bent on this, or maybe these things were already included, because we in those industries, let's say real estate, we just cared about who was buying, the house we were selling, or who was going to be staying who will be staying in our luxury hotel rooms or suites. So there, I felt, at least in my brief experience with these two industries, I did not feel much need to be pushing across a certain kind of message or being ultra careful, because this was already happening then. Let's say we can owe it to the nature of the industry that I didn't feel it, or I didn't see the difference as much as I would do with beauty and makeup brand or company. So I would just say I was probably lucky, but I'm very much, like I said, you connected me with certain people who are from absolutely different industry, from, it's got nothing to do with what I do. But it's always nice to get a perspective of, from such people. And I
Right.
think when I spoke to them, what I understood, or how relevant or how relatable it is to each industry, is that, again, within the company, there is a need of D&I. And then
Yes.
there's a need of D&I outside the company. So
Yes.
within each company, everybody's facing the same, let's say, same set of problems.
Right. I have one more question. I don't know if it might be relevant, but it has always been on my mind. Most of the
Sure.
times when we translate in retail, and again, I'd like to repeat because this is the area we're
Of course.
contextualizing in, we talk about the NY in the context of creating a certain type of offering, which might be more of a physical offering that could cater to specific types of people. When I mean, what I mean by offering is maybe a makeup brand or a type of garment or perfume, or we name it as such. However, does this concept of inclusion also translate to a feeling of certain people, or a need related to a talent or a know-how of certain people? Because I don't know if this applies. Most of the times we are faced also, maybe in types of HR situations, to working with specific categories of people because they are formatted as such. We have formatted our HR to also call in for people who have specific CVs with specific names. Are we also being inclusive in the ways we are looking for people to work within our brands or our companies? I don't know if this makes sense.
No, it absolutely makes sense. And here it reminds me of a debate, which is whenever you read a job description, it could be probably for a retail specialist person, it could be for somebody working within the company, in the strategy team. There's a word which is always mentioned, and people who view this video later on YouTube, for you, everybody's going to relate with it. It's called needs to be a cultural fit.
Hmm.
Cultural fit is a term which has been used over and
All
over
over.
again by recruiters, by HRs, in job descriptions. And I would like to ask, what does
What
a
is?
what is cultural fit? Please tell me, what is
Yes,
cultural fit? Do you
yes.
want the people to be saying yes to everything? Do you want to be sitting in a room where everybody says yes and there's no? Is it supposed to be a room where everybody looks alike? Is it supposed to be a room where everybody comes from an elite university? What do you mean by a cultural fit? And I think, this is where sense, more than product, a sense, a feeling comes into play. And we're not here to refer people to studies, but if anybody's interested, they can always just do a Google search. So many articles are going to pop up telling people that, showing us that a sense of belonging within a company is really important. And it comes when you're a diverse pool of people in an inclusive environment where every voice is heard, where every voice is different in the sense that you can actually have some creativity, you can have innovation. And DNI is known, is proven to increase innovation and creativity. It's proven to increase a sense of belonging. It's proven to increase happiness. And these are all factors which actually play out till the very end of, let's say, a consumer cycle, perhaps, what you're offering, how you're offering. And again, when we talk about a retail space, if you go into a store and you do not see anybody like yourself or anybody who understands you, it's not just about a physical relatability, it's just about anybody who understands you. How are you going to feel comfortable enough to ask them about the product, even if it exists, even if there's a product offering which exists, which is for you, but the person standing there cannot help you or doesn't
Yeah.
have enough idea about it?
Or
How
doesn't really relate to
relate
what
with
you.
it?
Yes.
How is that product ever going to sell? So
Right.
I think this cultural fit term needs to really be eradicated, or it needs to be given a new meaning, or it needs to definitely be given some sort of clarification out there as to what do you mean by a cultural fit? How does a
Right.
person fit a box?
Right, right. And it's really important. I mean, now we have managed to demystify this concept and to categorize it maybe by saying that when we're talking about inclusion, it's the concept, it's how it translates to the brand's identity, and then how it could relate to everything related to the brand's elements,
Yeah.
such as the people, the offering, and the communications. And again, we use that term like everything has to become one and everything has to be applied holistically.
Holistic.
However, I believe that today this is a big challenge, right? Because everything has to be rethought and reconceptualized to fit into that global or
Yeah,
bubble related to
exactly.
an I. I believe that we have covered most of the themes that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we should highlight throughout our couple of remaining minutes in the conversation?
I think this is something which we already touched upon, but I would also say, as much, DNI is definitely important, but it's important for us to see that we're not making superficial, let's say, taking superficial steps to counter it, to counter the problems. Let's say the diversity hire thing, hiring somebody just because they look different, whether they have the qualifications for the job or not, just to look good or just to increase the, percentage of people in your companies look better, show yourself better in reports. That's something which I already see has been coming, has started happening. We have a lot of diversity hires happening, which sort of pains me personally, because this is such an important topic and this is how we're
Right.
trying to deal with it without actually making ground level grassroots efforts for it. So I think this is just something which I'd like to highlight. We do have a big problem, we do have a big issue at hand, and this is not the way of solving it for sure. And it's also probably going to be important for us to say here that everybody can play a small role in it, because this is what I've learned. You do not have to be a DNI specialist, you do not have to be a part of DNI. Just engage in a conversation
Do
wherever
an
you're
effort.
working. Make an effort, just try to
Yeah.
understand. And It can be in any way. And also, please stop looking at D&I just under the color bracket or the age bracket or the gender bracket. Even though I do agree a lot of our conversation was perhaps around this, but that's purely because we're talking about an industry where this is relevant. It could be relevant in your industry, in your field of work, in various other ways. So I think these are just a couple of points which we've already discussed, of course, in our conversation. But I wanted to point out once again in the end, for people who are going to watch this video probably later on.
And I believe if we come to think about all this, it goes back to the fact that we need to be honest with ourselves, right? And
Yeah,
with ourselves, we're talking about management and in a
yeah,
company, and we have to be very honest and very authentic with everything that we're saying and doing, as this will be haunting us, I believe, for the
yeah,
coming years.
yeah,
And we have to be very responsible in terms of decisions that we're taking and how we're taking them, and not to be very hasty. I believe this
yeah,
is, I believe, like your way of doing it and thinking about it. Like, you have to think, you have to observe, and then not to jump into conclusions and
exactly.
decisions. Just think if your
Yeah,
brand really needs what you're
really needs
going
it.
to be.
And we've touched upon this again and again. The term which I used was space. Pace is important. Whether you want to do it, whether you not do not want to do it,
Right.
pace is important because it cannot be something absolutely revolutionary so that people can't understand or can't relate. Relatability is important. Hence, pace. Take it slow, understand, observe, and then see what's best for you or how best you can actually, work towards it.
Right. Thank you so much for all of this. I'm very happy that we managed to put this out there. Sometimes it's like difficult to talk about this topic. It might be a taboo in
Honestly,
some.
thank you so much for being such a big sport, actually doing it with your audience. Because whenever, like I mentioned, whenever I try to initiate this conversation, it always ends up in a heated argument or a debate or, people not trying to understand each other. And this is the first time I've been able to talk about it for almost an hour, laughing out loud. And I hope the people who joined us will join us in the future, will watch this conversation, can take it in the same stride, can be a sport about it. Of course, leave comments, tell us what you feel. Conversation or debate is always important. It doesn't necessarily have to be an argument because this is a topic which is not easily acceptable to
Right,
everybody. But
right.
so thank you so much for
It's I
making
who
it
needs to
easy.
thank you. And I'm really happy that we managed to do this because we know the context. I'm really like focused most of the times on retail, but I believe that people is part of retail. It's an integral part of retail, and I thought that it's really important to address this issue today, as we seek a better understanding of our retail spaces and enhancing retail experiences, and this is crucial. So thank you for that. I know sometimes people who join us might not want to comment or give their opinion directly, but we invite you, as Ananya said, to leave a DM or comment or get in touch if you have any specific questions. Ananya, if you can give us maybe your Instagram if they have any questions.
Sure, I missed you there. Sure, I
If
missed you there for a second. I think that was a bit of a lag, but yeah, you're asking for my, social handle. So of course, my Instagram handle is Ananya SR11. That's ANANYASR11. Otherwise, you can
Okay, I think I lost Ananya. I'm going to just redo a little invite, okay? And I hope I could connect with. I'm sorry for that.
Okay,
I don't
no.
know what happened. So this is the technology part that I'm
Well, I'm
going to
glad it
blame.
came at the absolute end, so you
And
almost done with
exactly.
everything.
Exactly. I'm sorry. I just have to take the final info from you and
No, no. Yeah.
so we said that people could contact you on Instagram, and I know that you're very active on LinkedIn.
Yes. That's where
So
the place where I'm actually doing all of this. This is the first time I'm using my Instagram for something like this. It's a new experience, but a good one for sure, because we
that's
had a
perfect.
really interesting conversation.
Thank you so much for your time and for all of this. This episode will be directly available on IGTV and later on YouTube for all those who missed the beginnings or some parts of it. So we are looking forward to your comments if you have any. Ananya, thank you so much, and I hope that we meet soon in Paris or
Yes,
somewhere
definitely.
else to discuss
Definitely.
this beautiful topic further. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and have a great evening. Talk to you
Thank
very
you.
soon. We'll stay in touch. Bye bye.
Right. Bye bye. Enjoy your stay.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.